Sigoli, Skanagoga, Kala Hyundi Nyangyats, Tahion Nibigitulot, Onyota Aga Nibigi Hanjut, Digniatut, Dedwadune Haladu, 2021. Good morning, my name is Martin Powless. I'm of the Wolf Clan and from Oneida Nation of the Thames. Want to talk a little bit about Oniko today. Oniko meaning wampum, really literally means shells on a string. So the earliest form of wampum was, when it was introduced, probably was at the time of the formation of the Great Law of Peace, when the peacemaker came to the Haudenosaunee. There was a time of great upset, and the peacemaker came to us and brought the Gaianatlakoa, or the Great Law of Peace. So the first belt we'll talk about today is this one, and this is called the Prophecy of the Coming of the Peacemaker. So what we've got depicted here is this is Sky World above. He brings the peace down from Sky World. It comes through his heart and his body to the people of the earth. This is the earth right here represented. So he brings the good mind, the message of peace, the Gaianatlakoa to the Iroquois nations who until that time had been at war, you know. So when we talk about these belts, do turn it around, show the other side. They always say you want to talk about the two sides of it because there's two sides to every story. So this is probably one of the first ones pre-contact that predicts him coming to us. And the peacemaker is a person that's immaculate conception. He's parthenogenic, what they say. That means he has no dad. He kind of like is almost like a Jesus Christ. So he's kind of like a supernatural person that comes to us in human form from the Hurons. So yeah, this one depicts the coming from Sky World and the bringing of peace to us. Thank you. And then we'll talk about what the Oniko is actually made of. This one here is called the quahog shell, and they're marine animals. They don't occur in the Great Lakes. This one here has the nice purple around it like that. The ohlana purple, how we say it. So only very little bit of it gets used just there. So it's very labor intensive. Made by hand, they'd probably only be able to make 5 or 6 a day, right? Because you can only get 2 or 3 out of that little piece. Then for the white ones, they usually come from the whelk shell, which is something like this. There's different types of whelk, but they'll usually use the little tunnel part right in here to shave down and create the white beads. So it seems as if that the purple beads represent the matters of serious nature for the nation, and then the white beads, they represent the path of peace, or peace, which is overriding concept in all of Haudenosaunee teachings. Is we all want to achieve peace. We want to achieve peace in ourselves. We want to achieve peace with the environment. We want to achieve peace with other nations. So it's always a talk about peace. You'll see there's white in all of these belts, some of them predominantly white. So maybe what we'll talk about next is the pre-Confederation, pre-contact belts, because a common misconception is that we had no organization, that it was terra nullius, the land's just unoccupied, but nothing could be further from the truth. As we'll see when we're talking about some of these belts, we had international relations, we had trade relations, we had internation relations that pre-existed the coming of the settler government. So these things are like a history book. When you make them, it really does feel like you're writing a history book, and it brings the mind to peace. It really clears the mind when you're working on these things to think about, maybe what they used to do long ago, or what they meant, or what the lessons in them are. Because there's a lesson in every one of these. It's not made just to look good. It's made so that it tells the story. So we'll talk about some of the pre-contact ones first. I guess the main one, I guess, that we all see and know about is this one's called the Hiawatha belt, or the Five Nations Lands belt. So before the times that Tuscarora joined us, there's only 5 nations depicted here. Time immemorial, nobody knows exactly when the Great Law of Peace was formed. Some people figure it's about 1100 AD. So that's the closest that the anthropologists can come, but we say time immemorial. So if you're looking from the south to the north to our lands, you'd go from the east is the Mohawk, Oneida, Onondaga, Cayuga, Seneca. So as I mentioned, it's the Hiawatha belt, or the Five Nations Lands belt. These, as I understand it, represent the lands of everybody. when you talk about, you know, Onyotaga, the Ga part is the lands of them. Kayengahaga, Onyotaga, Onondaga, Cayuga Seneca, it's always got that Ga at the end to mean the lands of the people there. And then we're an adopting nation, so this is explained to be a little bit more land is going to be required. We're the adopting nation from the east. We brought the Tuscarora in 1722 or thereabouts. So this represents the, you know, the formation of the Great Law of Peace, the Guyana-Lagoa, before the settler governments came. So this is you know, our oldest probably depiction of our unity like that, and the Confederacy. And you see it everywhere. It's like our flag, kind of our national flag. So this one's the very recognizable one. It's done the full size, which is 38 beads wide. This one contains approximately 7,500 beads. Probably takes 75 hours to make, and get it all tied off and build the loom for it and everything. So that's the Hiawatha belt. Thank you. Pre-contact we're talking now. So that one. And then also this one here, another one of the more impressive belts that we have. It actually is the longest one we have. This one's called the Ever-Growing Tree of Peace belt. So here's the base of it. It's one of the tallest trees, the white pine, and it represents the peace. When they talk about the formation of the Confederacy, you know, all nations are invited to come to share in this great law of peace if they follow the great white roots. Whiskey white roots of peace, they come to the tree if you follow them. And anybody who wants to adopt our ways and respects, you know, our traditions and the way we live, they're able to seek shelter under these trees and join the Confederacy. Only one nation has ever done it, which was the Tuscarora, but this also depicts, it's 50 wide, so it depicts the 50 chiefs. Sometimes it's also called the Confederate dust fan belt. Keep dangers away from the Confederacy fire. So it kind of functions as, it's symbolic of the 50 chiefs because there's 50 beads across and it reaches all the way to Sky World. That's what this depicts. It goes all the way up. So one of the larger, I guess the largest belt I know of, and again it's pre-Confederation or pre-contact. Another one that's probably pre-contact is this here. What they call the women's nominating belt. So the way this one's been explained to me is that this represents the women's power within the longhouse in our culture. These are the Six Nations and the clan mothers represented. This is the longhouse, the rafters of it, maybe the door or the fire of the longhouse. But what it represents is that the matrilineal clan mothers are able to name or depose the chiefs as they have the real power within the longhouse. Also within our teachings, it says that the women own the land. They're the progenitors and owners of land. So really men were, you know, hunters, defenders, diplomats, but the women owned the village, they owned the land and the longhouses and everything like that. So it symbolizes the female and matrilineal nature of our society. This is from 500 years ago. We've always had this. And then this one too probably was pre-contact. Yeah, this one is called the hospitality belt. It's an ancient Mohawk belt. But what it represents is that when you invite somebody to your territory, you treat them good, right? You feed them, you make sure they're comfortable, you give them a good place to sleep. So this gets laid out when you welcome them and you know, welcome them to your territory. Yeah, I think it's displayed this way, but that's what it represents, that one. A very simple belt, but I think we want to reinstitute using belts like this. Like when we invite somebody to our territory, we should lay this out in front of them, explain what it is, you know, feed them, treat them good. Like we're very good hospitalists, so that one represents that. Also probably pre-contact, we have this one here. This is this represents the nation of Iroquois and Ojibwe, path of peace between them. Because in the history we kind of warred with them and, you know, competed over some of the same territory. Eventually both sides realized that, you know, we're better off to have peace and we can share this land and not shed blood anymore. There's enough here to share for everybody. It kind of almost reinforces the dish with one spoon. Unfortunately, we don't have it here today, but the dish says that everybody shares the resources. It doesn't belong to anybody. You don't ruin it. You don't take more than you need. You leave it clean for everybody. So there's enough bounty provided by the Creator in our lands that nobody owns it. We don't have a conception of land ownership. It's we take care of it, we use it. Very foreign to what the settler governments believe. They all think they own lands, but the persistence of Mother Earth over millennium, we can't own lands. We're just lucky to be here a little bit. I think it's very arrogant to think you own land. You're supposed to take care of it. So then we'll get into a little bit more of the, well, this one here too is probably, this is my own creation. I call it the Four Sacred Beings belt. These guys are supposedly all around us at all times, guide our thoughts, hopefully protect us a bit. They're present at ceremonies, they say. And yeah, they're just beings that protect the well-being of humans on Earth, and they're spiritual. They get sent when we need help, and they're around us. So just know that they're always around us, and they'll offer us support. So then, I think that's all the pre-Confederation belts or pre-contact belts. We'll get into some of the belts that arose after contact now. So when they first came, it would be this one's called the Hiawatha Gaswenta, 2 dark rows. But it's the foundational document from 1613 treaty with the Dutch people. Treaty of Tawaganchi, probably around 1613. So what it represents is 2 societies, separate and distinct, that will go down the river of life in peace, friendship, and with respect. Nobody's tried to make their laws apply to each other. So this one was said to last as long as the earth is in motion, as long as the grass grows green at certain times of the year, and as long as water flows downhill, as long as the earth is in motion. That means forever. Our people know what forever means, but the settler governments seem to have forgot it. We've always held this one to be true, and still to this day, we work within our own government system. I mean, we've been forced to work with them, but the original agreement for the settlers to stay in our lands was to leave us alone, and that's all we want still, I think. If we could ever get back to that, it'd be great. Yeah. So Digini Yohate Gaswenta, that one later on forms into, like, that was made with the Dutch originally. Then we get to, with the other First Nation, other nations that come. This one here originates in 1677. It's called the Covenant Chain, Silver Covenant Chain between Iroquois and the Haudenosaunee and the white settler government. The people with the dark skin and the heart of peace are connected with this relationship to the white-skinned people with the dark heart. That's the way it was explained to me. We're supposed to be able to tug on that chain, when we need assistance. And you see, we're on the same level. We're equal. We treaty as sovereign nations, not as wards or as underlings of any state. So the way they've got us today in Canadian law, it does not accurately depict the true relationship that's supposed to be between us. This one's around 1677 with the English. And then we get into a little bit more modern day, where this one here represents our depiction of the Jay Treaty. Jay Treaty took place in 1794. This depicts the United States and what now is Canada, and the fact that we have the border crossing rights free from all disturbances. We're supposed to be able to cross that imaginary border that was imposed on us. It separates our homelands, basically, and our hunting grounds. So the way I built this one is, like I say, this represents the continent, or the country now of Canada, what they call it, and the United States over here. But and the way I said is that this covers the whole continent, like it goes right across all of the continent from north to south, and then there's 13 moons, so it applies on all of those 13 moons every day, all year, through the whole year. So like we measure time in moons instead of the calendar that they got today. Jay Treaty. So this one was never produced or presented to us. It's our depiction to commemorate what was said there. A lot of these treaties that are made by colonial governments affect our rights, and they never even consult us on it. But even then, they realize that we still have this right to do this. Then a little bit later, that same concept is reaffirmed with this belt here. This is called the William Claus Promise of Peace belt from 1814. So it's after the War of 1812, when the hostilities had ended. He actually gave this to the Six Nations, and it says that you're able to, use your land to and fro however you want, as you did before the start of the hostilities. So it's called the Promise of Peace Belt, 1814, presented to the Six Nations that we have the right to cross and use our territory as we did before the war broke out. And so we do have a few agreements memorialized in these belts that talk about our freedom of movement across the borders, and we're still fighting for that right today. There's something going on in the States where they're going to remove the 50% blood quantum now, but we still have to get Canada to recognize these treaties. Canada and the British are the real ones that don't recognize the original relationship we had. They try to always thwart it. But it's our job, I guess, to keep fighting for that. So the other one we got here, and this one's the Oneida tribal belt. And it shows the Six Nations here, so obviously it has to be after 1722 when the Tuscaroras came in. This one is talked about where, at the outset of the American Revolution, it caused a split within the Confederacy. The fires had to be covered, and you go back to your own territory and you decide, what you're going to do. We always tried to maintain neutrality, but everybody had to go back to their own nation, decide who they're going to fight for. So two of us, Oneida and Tuscarora, generally fought for the Americans, and then the rest of the Six Nations kind of fought for the British. But this belt, I think, represents after the war, when they came back and they relit the fires at Six Nations and at Onondaga, 1790s, so that we get back together and we reformed the Confederacy that was forced to be covered because of the colonial wars. But Oneida belt's very striking. It's just a brilliant design. And these, represent the nations and their fires with their own independence at their own territories in their own lands like that. Open-ended to show that this relationship's going on and we can adopt again. Maybe there'll be 7 here someday, who knows on down the road. But it's always about growth. It's always about expanding and extending that coverage of the Great Law to other nations that want to come. So Oneida belt's one of my particular favorites. It's very beautiful. And what else do we got here? Okay, so I'll show you how I make them. This one here is my loom, made a homemade loom, made out of cedar, and you've got the sinew here. The one I'm currently constructing is called the John Graves Simcoe belt. This one was in about 1794. He was the Lieutenant Governor of Upper Canada at the time, and he came through this area and made some promises to the First Nations. So this depicts those promises he made then as the upper government official. He wanted to make London, an area here, the seat of Indian government. It never happened that way. Government totally ended up in Ottawa, but at the time he was coming through, he wanted it to be here. So how much different would our lives be if this was the National Capital Region? Who knows? But again, it shows that these officials realized that they have to foster relationships with the First Nations that are here. And this was our protocol, is that we don't really think that anything's official until there's an exchange of wampum. That's the solemnity of these agreements, right? It shows that we really mean that we're going to keep these agreements forever. It's something that the white society never really caught on to. They realized that we wanted these belts to symbolize them, but I don't think they ever really meant to hold those agreements true when they made them. They just wanted to acquire our lands, our military assistance. So these things, like, we got to keep these in foremost in our people's minds, especially the young ones, so that they can take this and fight for our rights. Like, it's never going to be a never-ending thing until we can achieve the sovereignty we're supposed to have. We're supposed to be equal with these governments, not under them, and that's the way they treat us. But okay, so maybe a little bit more about this here. So the way we talk about this here is that, how do you make it? Like, what is it made of? So we talk about ojineta, that's the beads. Owiske ojineta, kale ohalana ojineta, kale oniguanta ojineta, ne onigolha, meaning that white, blue, and purple make this wampum. And then what else you say is that, what got tuni, that means I've made it. Gana gayel, how did I do it? What gay gan he, that means you piece it together. So you got to get the beads and piece it together. Lowanha, that means I've tied it. After every row, like, you bring the beads up below it, You put it around the top and put the needle back through, and then you tie it down here. Every one of the bottom rows is double knotted so it doesn't come apart. Lawanha. This is asli, the string. And I don't have one here, but galoon wale, it means the needle you use. And then nutuk, it takes a long time. So yeah, but the time just seems to go. When you're building something like this, all of a sudden you'll look up and it's 3 hours later, but you don't even realize the time's gone like that. It's a pleasure to do it. As I mentioned before, it brings the mind to peace, and it really means something. This is like our textbook. This is like our representation of the agreements we made with the white settler governments. Not everything's told on those papers. Probably most of it's not told on those papers. Not what the understanding of our people was anyways. And then there's also some belts that I've just kind of invented, thinking about it and what we want represented, and just an interesting design. So talking about reestablishing the wampum belt diplomacy. This one here, yeah, I developed this one. It's got Abenaki figures. Abenaki is a East Coast band near the Mashantuckets, the people that actually make wampum. So they developed the figure like this and the basic design. But I made this into what we call the Chippewa, Munsee, Oneida unity belt. So the three nations here, we've taken each other by the arm. And this depicts the river here. And then the Odonyot, Migizi in Chippewa and Odonyot. The eagle has come back to the river in the last few years. He's watching out for us because in the legends and the stories of the Iroquois Confederacy, the eagle or the Odonyot, right? He sits atop the great white pine. He warns us of danger, protects us sort of, and he's kind of a communicator to the Creator too. So this one has the meaning that we've agreed to work for the benefit of our next 7 generations together, the CMO nations. We presented it to them in January of 2019. They accepted it. They thought it was pretty cool. And whenever we have our tri-council meetings now, they all bring their belt like this. So modern day reestablishment of working relationships with other nations. So again, we got to start dealing on a sovereign basis, which is what we are. We've never given up our sovereign nation status. We've never been conquered. It's just that the people we treated with never held it true to the agreement. So we got to hold Canada and the United States to these things. And I think it's much more impactful and hopefully successful when you bring these belts. When we meet with them, we got to take it right to them and say, hey, this is the deal, and we don't forget it. So that's the CMO unity belt. Okay, and also we have a clan belt here that I've made. This one's called Tohion, the Wolf clan. That's the one I'm a member of, and also the family I belong to is Wodatset, that we talked about in the other belt there. So I'm going to make other clan belts like this. We also have the turtle and bear, but I just thought it was kind of cool to put your clan right in a belt too, so people know who you are. And that's about the best wolf I could do. I'm still refining technique on that, And then the other one I created was the United States of Haudenosaunee. Right, again, it shows the Hiawatha belt where traditionally the stars of the United States are. But everybody knows the story of how the United States was formed on, the principles of our democracy, right? They seen how the Great Law functioned, and they united their 13 colonies on the basis of that model. So I thought it's more appropriate to have our symbol on this flag because they fought over our lands. That's not even their lands. They fought over our lands and made deals for our rights on those lands, and we were never conquered in war. So, I think this is the way the flag really should look. This one probably belongs in the museum, like I'm saying. Maybe they should go to a museum in Oneida, or maybe one of the Smithsonian museums, somewhere at Oneida in the homelands, because we fought for America, and they still took our lands. So this one makes them never forget this is what the flag should look like. And then finally, the last one we'll talk about today is my own creation as well. This one I call the unity of the clan families of the Oneida Nation, because it's based on the same design as the Oneida belt was that we showed earlier, open-ended. Then these represent the clan families here. So you've got the you've got the Tahion, you've got the Ahnowal, and the Ogwali clans. They each have 3 titles within them. That fire represents the title and the clan mother's giving of that title. So, and then the fact that usually what I think happens is that the turtles will put the issue out to the other clans, and then they make a response back. So they work together in Skana, Kale Oniko, the good mind and the peaceful thinking. So yeah, this one, when you talk about, also we want to get to a point, I think, and we're probably going to produce it here, where in like wolf, you have right to the quiver carrier, you have the through the opening and tall standing corn. We're going to learn those names and the responsibilities for them, and you know, make it an interactive thing so that our people can learn about it. Then you get over to the Ahnowal, or the turtle, and you have he lowers his body, his long house, and the forked root, the titles of their clans. And Ogwali, finally, you have the listening ears, he's surrounded in mist, and he's laying on his back. So I would like that our kids be able to see this belt, interpret it, know how to say it in Oneida, and what the responsibilities of those clans are and what this thing means. It's full of history, this one. You could talk about this one for days. So we have to expand our knowledge and work more on this one to be able to get it in the hands of the kids. I think that people should have these and around. Like I said, I never seen a belt till I was 50 years old. I never held one. You want to get it in your hands. You want to get it in people's hands. A lot of people put them in, you know, like a frame on the wall. But you got to feel this thing. You got to touch it. You got to put feeling into it. There's a lot of feeling in it from when you're making it, but as it touches other people too. And these things are referred to as a river of knowledge. So that the more knowledge this generation gets and gives it to the next one, it flows like a river like that. And then it'll go on to the next generation. It's a living document, and you really get the language when you start doing these things too. Like I didn't know much Oneida language before, but you know, when I start building these, then you want to learn the language to talk about them too and what it means. So I hope everybody learned something today about Oniko, the wampum belts. They're very important historically. And you know, it's our identity, it's our history book, it's our evidence of the treaties we made with these foreign governments, and it forms the basis of our rights in Turtle Island. So I want to keep making them. I want to teach other people how to make them and learn as much as we can about them, because obviously you can't learn everything there is to know about wampum belts, but you know, you can expand your knowledge, and other people can help fill in those. So y'all, go for listening today.